Hi Gresham families. My name is Jessica McMahan. I'm your student's 8th grade math teacher this year. I just wanted to touch base with you guys over a few things on grading and some changes that I've made in the grade book that I think will better support your student. And I just wanted to make you aware of some things as we finish out this school year. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what standards-based grading is. So I've got a short video, it's just 2 minutes long, that will sort of give you an idea about what standards-based grading is, which is what we do here at Gresham. Um, so let's watch this video together.
Standards-based grading is an innovation in education that focuses on student learning and helps increase achievement. Instructional techniques in standards-based classrooms better engage students and foster positive learning environments. Rather than tracking a single overall grade, subjects are broken down into many smaller learning targets. Each target is a teachable concept students should master throughout the course. Learning targets are written in student-friendly language, so students can understand and participate in their learning. They link back to rubrics, which give concrete guidance on each target. As students work on activities, they can self-assess their progress. Teachers provide specific feedback to help students improve. Education becomes a conversation about skills, allowing students to engage in and take ownership of the process. In traditional grading, this sort of feedback is possible, but less common. One score per assignment does not provide enough information for deep student engagement. While some good teachers do give helpful feedback, the structure of a traditional classroom makes it difficult. Scores in standards-based grading usually range from 1 to 4, reflecting a ladder of mastery, increasing in complexity. At the bottom, students have no understanding of a topic. As students learn, they climb up a rung as they gain basic understanding. They keep climbing until they reach the target. Standards-based grading data makes differentiated instruction easier to implement. When teachers have mastery information readily available, they can dynamically group students and give them level-appropriate lessons. Students at level 1 get activities to help them reach level 2. Level 2 students get activities to climb to level 3. Classrooms break into smaller groups with students working independently on activities intended for their skill level. With relevant instruction, students are more engaged in their learning. They can see their efforts result in growth, reinforcing work ethic and good habits. Sometimes students take multiple attempts to move up the ladder. In standards-based grading, students can try and retry as they work toward the targets. High-stakes tests are replaced with multiple opportunities to demonstrate mastery. This creates an emotionally safe environment where failure is temporary. Fear is removed from the classroom, encouraging students to stretch themselves, make mistakes, and learn. We hope you've enjoyed this standards-based grading video. It was created by the team at Teachers, which provides software for standards-based learning. Please like this video or subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Okay, so that should give you sort of a basic idea of what standards-based grading is. And the reason that I think we have adopted it here at Gresham is because it seems to help students sort of break this mindset that school is just about accumulating points. You know, it's all about making the A, and there's less of a focus on skills. But it's the skills that lead from one class to another. It's not the A, it's the skills that came with the A, right? So we sort of want to change our mindsets as teachers because we certainly were not brought up in the standards-based grading platform. So it's something that we sort of have to retrain our brains about. But I have noticed that I think kids do better this way because it doesn't feel like everything is pass or fail. It feels like that they have multiple opportunities to try something. And if we think about real life, then that's how real life works. Typically, if you want to acquire a new skill, let's say you want to learn how to play guitar, you're not going to learn how to do it in one sitting, right? It takes practice. It takes a lot of practice, depending on what the skill is. And some people attain it faster if they practice more. Some people attain it slower if they don't practice as much. There's just so much variability. And by allowing students to engage in the standards-based grading process, they can They can get more opportunities to show what they know, basically. And the grade for a particular assignment or standard or whatever doesn't have to be set in stone. So if they didn't get it the first time around, then we're going to revisit it. It's something that we revisit several times. So as soon as they're able to show me that they can do a skill, then that grade increases. And the actual assignments at that point can be a little bit more flexible and negotiable, so that one student might do better at explaining something verbally and another student might do better at doing an assignment. So that sort of frees us up to help students on a more individual basis instead of trying to uh, put everybody into a one size fits all approach, which I personally feel like doesn't work. And I hope that you can sort of go with us on this. Um, so, like I said, we are focused more on the acquisition of a skill over time rather than the pursuit of points. So, as someone starts learning something, if you think about the first time somebody picks up that guitar, they're not going to, they will not have mastered it. They will be a novice. They will be a beginner. Okay? So it's really important that that first time they pick up a guitar is not the only time that we're judging them on that. That they have multiple times to practice. So if we see a low grade at first, know that that can always get better. Okay? And what I'm going to sort of tell you today is to just sort of break down how the grade book is set up, demonstrate the grade book a little bit, show you what features it has that I've created for you, so that you can be you and your student can be sort of more in touch with what is going on in the classroom on a daily basis and how you can support them best at home. So I'm going to start with just how my grade book is broken down. So in math, currently at Gresham, and this is not just in my classroom, but all the math classrooms, we decided on an 80-20 approach. So we have 80% standards-based grades and 20% supporting content. So the standards-based grades are the ones that are divided into individual learning targets or standards, the skills that the student is supposed to know. And they need to be able they're going to be judged 80% of the time on those standards based grades. And the supporting content is basically the assignments or the small quizzes that sort of build the 80%, if that makes sense. So we'll sort of, let's see what that looks like in a little bit more depth. So let's just first look at the standards-based grade part, the 80%. The 80% standards-based grade category will change over time. It's not something that's going to be set in stone. So we need to think about it as does the student have the skill yet? Have they acquired the skill? If they have mastered it, then their grade would be higher, right? And if they haven't mastered it, then their grade would be lower. But that's not an indication that the student is necessarily doing poorly, because we have to take into account how many times has the student been assessed on that learning target, which is something that I will do in the classroom frequently, but also something that I'm going to show you how you can actually do at home to sort of gauge whether or not your student is doing well on a topic or not. I think this will especially help folks that are at home right now, and my people that are on virtual learning. So again, that's about showing mastery over time. It's not just one assignment. It is a collection of assignments. This category is an average of the supporting content, so the 20%. So the assignments that we do in the 20% category are low stakes, which means that they're not going to make or break a student, right? Because the 80% is there for the big bulk. It's the thing that should show the best picture of what the student knows. So this smaller 20% allows the students to try things, and it's okay to fail. It's okay to not get it right the first time. It's okay not to have a great grade on the first go around. We can always build that up over time. So, like on day one, we certainly would expect them to have a low score, and then maybe by day 5, we would expect them to have a much higher score. So this 20% ends up becoming an average of all the small assignments that they do, and that becomes their standards based grade. It's the average of all the attempts here, which I think shows a better picture of what's really going on with a student. Because if you think about the traditional way where we just had an A, we just had one assignment, over the top, one or two assignments over a topic, and then we moved on. Well, the thing about that is it doesn't necessarily show me that the student knows what they're doing, because if we think about it being homework, well, most students are very capable of looking things up online, and I encourage them to look things up online from time to time. But if we're relying mostly on Google and not enough on ourselves, or if we're relying on the teacher for help when it comes to, like, when we've gone on into a a topic, and they're expected to sort of start doing it by themselves, but they're relying too much on asking the teacher for help, asking a parent for help, asking a neighbor for help, looking off someone else's paper just so that they can get that A. But that A really doesn't mean anything if they didn't actually get the skill. And so when we have these smaller chunks at a time, I feel like it's more digestible for the students, and it helps us to show a better picture of what they know. So each standards-based grade is represented by a Tennessee State standard and its student-friendly learning target. So we'll see what that looks like in just a couple minutes. I have an example for you on that. So the 20% looks more like student assignments, small progress checks. So instead of having big, giant unit tests, we are going to basically have small quizzes over the standards. So we might just test one or two standards at a time, and that will allow us to keep building that 80%. We might have two tests over one standard instead of just one, so that we can allow the student as many opportunities as possible to show us and themselves that they have acquired that skill. Many of these assignments can be redone. In fact, almost everything can be redone. But there might be a few things that I want to put on a deadline, or for one reason or another, we might not be able to redo it. But for the most part, any assignment can be redone at any time, provided that the student asks to do it and has a good reason for doing it. Now, I don't want the student, however, to just do an assignment, and if they did bad on it, just keep guessing. Just guess. I'm going to guess my way through it till I get 100. Well, that's fine, except for I wonder sometimes how much we've really learned from that, because if I'm pretty sure anybody could just eventually guess the right answers if it's a multiple choice, assignment. So we have to be careful about when we redo some assignments. It might be better to just give a different assignment on the same skill instead of just completely redoing something over and over. But again, that's part of the 20%. That's something that I don't mind if they redo things. I don't mind if they try to get better scores on things. But there might be some stipulations on that. On the other hand, the standards-based grades, that's always going to be a work in progress, until the end of the year. They will have an opportunity to even, increase their standards. Maybe if we have a standard at the very beginning of the semester, we could still be in May and the students still be building their understanding of that standard, because we might review one standard in something like a bell ringer at the beginning of the day, like, a little refresher or something that we might do, and that can continue to build that 80%. So the 20% category is basically going to be average to make up the 80% category. Now, there might be some larger quizzes that I include only in the standards-based category, but that will be sort of clearly explained when that happens. But for the most part, everything's just, the 80% is going to be made up of averages over time of the 20%. Okay, so what does an actual standard look like? Well, I'm going to give you guys the first standard of this second semester that we've been working on. So this is an example of one of the standards-based grades. Okay, it is tied to an actual Tennessee state standard. So tied to a skill that your student is expected to know by the end of 8th grade. So this standard, they all have numbers and letters attached to them. So this is A.FA1, which means it's 8th grade. The 8 stands for 8th grade. The F stands for functions. We're in the functions module. And the A and the 1 are just saying it's the first one in the set, basically. And this is part of the 80%. Okay, and this is the first grade of the second semester. So the standard itself says that the student should be able to understand that a function is a rule that assigns each input to exactly one output. The graph of a function is a set of ordered pairs consisting of an input and the corresponding output. And what this really amounts to in student-friendly language is I can distinguish between functions and non-functions when they're represented on a table, graph, mapping, an equation, or an ordered pair. And we go through all those examples. So to know whether or not a student has mastered it, we've come up with these scales. So a novice, or somebody that is just starting out, might have a grade of 75 or below, because they're only able to do the most basic of problems, right? They could just tell me if something is a function or not, and only based on, one or two of these representations. So that's what it would look like to be a novice. That does not mean necessarily that the student is failing. That just means that at that current point, the student is a novice. Now, if it is the sort of the end of when we, finish talking about that topic and the student is still a novice, then we might be concerned. But as far as when we just start a topic, if they're a novice, that's the expectation, because you can't be an expert until you are all the other things first, right? You're not born an expert. You're born a novice and you learn to be an expert. So if you see grades that are somewhat low, remember that it's not a complete picture. It's always a work in progress. That being said, of course, when it comes to report cards, they do have to have a letter grade attached to them. And so for the novice category, that would typically amount to a D. The only way that a student really could get an F and be a novice is if the student just chooses not to do work at all. Perhaps they have missing assignments or something like that. But to get a D, that would be well within that 70 to 75, and that would still be passing. So don't stress too much at first if maybe you see a couple of the low grades, because remember, it's going to be built up over time. And so each of these, and you can read these on your own, but they just list some characteristics of what it looks like to be a novice versus an apprentice, practitioner, or expert. Of course, we always want everybody to the expert category, but I think proficiency to be able to do a standard is really, in the green or blue. We want everybody in the green or blue if we can get them there. Um, just sort of in general. So before I move on, well, actually, as we move on, I'm going to show you what Aspen looks like. So Aspen is the software that we use to show students, or to show, it's our grade book, for lack of a better word. It's our grade book, and it's how we communicate with students and parents how the student is doing in a particular class. Unfortunately, I don't have a student view or a parent view on Aspen that I know of. So mine is going to look a little bit different than what you look at when you log in to Aspen. And if you don't have a parent account for Aspen, then I encourage you to get one. And I'll explain at the end of this how to get that if you don't have that, because I think you should be monitoring your kids' grades on a pretty frequent basis. I mean, log in every day and see what's going on. Just because I think they definitely need, still at this age, a little bit of check in and coaxing to do some things. Okay, so let's actually look at the grade book right now and see what things look like. So I'm just going to talk about one standard. So this same standard we were just looking at on the other page, the 8FA1. And I've got it blank here in a couple ways because I've just started putting in grades. Obviously, I don't have any names put up here or anything like that, but I'm just going to sort of show you how this is going to work and what it's going to look like so that you can interpret it when you look at it. Okay, so remember we have the 80% and the 20%. So the 80% would be this 8FA1. That's the standard itself, okay? And what I have done for the standard itself is I have given you in Aspen some information. So when you go on Aspen, if you click on the actual standards themselves, so 8FA1 is the first standard, 8FA2 over here is the second, then it gives you some information. So let's click on that and see what comes up. So that's sort of some stuff on my end, but this is what you guys will see if you actually click on the assignment. So number one, it says up here, this grade is a standards-based grade. It will change throughout the semester. Each time we have an assignment that covers this standard, a new assignment will be averaged in. So that just sort of tells you what I just, reiterated a few minutes ago. So on each of these, though, I tell what the standard is, okay, so what the student should be able to do. 8FA1 is the student should be able to distinguish between functions and non-functions, what we just talked about. So I tell you what the standard is. You have access to this as well as the student. Both of you have access to exactly what you're looking at here, okay? And then I actually give the mastery levels as well, the novice to advanced, and those characteristics. Notice that the standard in adult language, I guess, or mathy language up here is also listed. So the I can statement would be the student version of the standard, and then the actual, more complex language would be here. So that gives you the characteristics of what you should be looking for that standard for your student. And then I write down here, to be successful on this standard, students will be assessed as many times as necessary to reach mastery. So the goal is always mastery. And, one student might be able to master it in 2 assignments, whereas it might take another student 3 or 4 assignments. And like I said, the assignments are pretty negotiable. One assignment could be a quiz that we take, or maybe I pull a couple of students up that were in the red category and we just talk over some things. Maybe I get them to work a problem in front of me. That could constitute as an assignment. And that's what I like about the standards-based grade is we're not tied to traditional formats of assignments. We can get kind of creative. Maybe your student is not a great test taker, but they're great at explaining things. And I think we should take that into account because some people are better at some things and some people are better at other things. Now, eventually, of course, they will have to take standardized tests, but I also want to give them as many opportunities as possible to show me that they know something in a way that's comfortable to them. Okay, so once, uh, well, um, lost my train of thought. Okay, so the student will be assessed as many times as necessary to reach mastery. To show mastery, students should be able to do problems like the ones um, attached below, unassisted. Okay, so what I've added to each of the standards are these sample problems. So if you want to truly know if your student has mastered the standard or not, and it's not real clear maybe up with these characteristics up here, then do some of these problems with them. Ask your student, can you do all 7 of those problems without my help or without help from you guys or without help from Google? And if your student can do those problems, then they probably have mastered the topic. So that not only gives me an idea of what they might know or what they don't know, but it also gives the students something to shoot for. And it's very explicit over what style problems they should be able to do in order to get that green or blue. And I think that knowing what you need to know is sometimes half the battle. Okay, so I have put these sample problems on every one of the standards-based grades so that it is very clear what the student needs to be able to do. Okay, and that's just the crux of everything right now. The student needs to be able to know and identify what they're supposed to be able to do. So clarity is what I'm going for here, for both myself, the student, and the parents. Okay, so that's what all of the standards-based grades look like. Now, we'll see what the other stuff means. So, that's the standards-based grade. But then attached to the standards-based grades, we have other things that say 8FA1. For example, this first one here, 8FA1-A1, the long form of the assignment, I don't know if you guys can see it. I'll click on it so you guys can see it up close. So there's a short form and a long form. So the short form of the assignment is 8FA1-A1, which means, which actually means that we're talking about the standard 8FA1, and this is assignment 1 on that standard. And then what is that assignment? Well, it was the quizzes that I gave them. And what I do to the best, I try to do this to the best of my abilities. I have not been completely perfect at this, but I do my best. In the portal description, or for you guys when you scroll down after you've clicked on the assignment, I try to give what the student, or I try to tell the student how to find the assignment and what they need to do to increase their grade. So the assignment was the quizzes, was on Quizzes, which is an app that we use, and it's called 8FA1. So the name of the assignment was 8FA1 on Quizzes. However, I think that it was something that we did in class, so it might be that it needs like a code to redo or something like that, so I accounted for that down here. So if you ever cannot find an assignment, then just let me know and I'll make sure that your student can get that. But for the most part, I try to make it pretty clear on what they need to do to change that missing to an actual grade. Okay, so that's an example of an assignment. And then we have the same standard, and then it says P1. So a progress check is basically what I'm calling a quiz or a test. It's just to try to see how well they're doing so far on that standard. And so the progress checks are all on Edulastic. Edulastic is sort of like our test taking software that we're using this year in math. Okay, so for currently, for this first standard, they have 2 assignments that they can show mastery on. So what's going to end up happening? Now remember, we only have 2 right now. We will eventually have more, but at the moment we just have 2. So what is going to eventually happen when I have the time to do it all is these numbers, these supplemental, these are in the 20% by the way. So this supporting content is going to get averaged together and replace and be placed here in the 8FA1. So for example, let's look at this student here. So on the supporting content, the student got a 60 and then a 91. That's in the 20%. Now, I'm going to address why all these F's are there in just a few minutes, because I'm sure some parents are wondering about that, as they should. Um, so right now we've got the 60 and we've got the 91. So those are going to get averaged together. So let's just come over on the calculator, and we've got 60 plus 91. And then we'll divide that by 2, and that gives us a 75.5. So instead of putting either one of those grades in, I'm going to put the 75.5. Now, if the student sees that 75.5 and says, "Ooh, that puts me in just above the novice category," so I guess in the apprentice category, so I might want to raise that up. So if they see that, then they can say, "Hey, Miss McMahan, could you give me an extra assignment on 8FA1?" And we can go ahead and get the ball rolling so that gets raised up. Or I might call the student. I might, find all the kids that have grades similar to that and say, "Hey, we all need to break ourselves into a small group today and do some work together," while maybe the people that are blue or green might be doing another assignment. Maybe they'll go on to the next standard. Okay, so that becomes an average of whatever the supporting content is. Okay, and there's just 2 right now, but like I said, there will be more. And then we have this thing in the middle that I haven't talked about. Now it's crossed out. The reason it's crossed out is because it doesn't actually affect their grade, but it just tells the mastery level. So this is a 75.5. So if we go back and remember our chart here, a 75.5 would be just above the novice category. So that would, a 0.5 would of course round up to a 76. So this student would be in the apprentice category. Which there's some difference in language here. So on here we call it apprentice, but actually on Aspen I call it BAS, and it'll turn yellow, and that means basic. Okay. So if you see a BAS and it's yellow, then that means the student is in the basic category. If you see an ADV that's blue, then they're in the advanced blue category. If you see a PROF, and it will be green, then your student's in the proficient category. And then the final one would be the novice. I had already had these from a previous year, so some of the names are different, but the colors have stayed the same. So these, like I said, don't affect your grade at all. In fact, that's why it's crossed out. It means that it's not calculated in the average, and it just gives you a picture of which mastery category that the student is in. Okay, so that's how that works. And I also wanted you guys to notice that I'm going to take this 75.5 away for just a second. And I want you to look at this final grade over here. So this is like the total grade. Let's take that away for a second. So notice that it was at a 36. And then I put the 75.5 back in, and we're up to a 67. So that shows that this is really the important stuff, right? This is the average of the individual assignments. So that raised the grade quite a bit. Okay, so that sort of gives you just a general idea of what the grade book looks like. If you have any questions about that, please let me know, and I can give you all the answers that you need. The other thing I wanted to talk about was those F's, and we'll address that in just a couple minutes. So let me go back here for just a second, make sure I said everything I needed to. So we interpreted the student's grade in Aspen, and then I want to talk about how you can support your student at home. So I came up with some things that might help for you to help your student with. One thing would be encourage your student to be brave enough to make mistakes. Part of learning is making mistakes. And in fact, I think I read an article the other day that said when you make a mistake, your brain actually creates more links or more neurons, more brain cells when you make a mistake and then learn from it than you did if you had just, already known it, if it was something that was easy for you. So making mistakes is normal, it's healthy, it's part of learning everything. One thing I tell my students is that you weren't born knowing how to walk, right? You're born without that skill. You don't know how to walk. And how do you learn how to walk? Well, first you have to crawl. You have to strengthen different muscles. And then once you're able to crawl, then you can kind of pull yourself up, and you get from the floor, when the baby starts pulling up in the crib, and then maybe they might stand there without holding on to anything. And then eventually, maybe when they see a toy that's just outside of their reach, they might take that first step, right? So learning things is a process. It's never something that happens overnight. Math wasn't developed overnight. So why would we think our students could learn it overnight? They can't. So mistakes is part of it, and the sooner we embrace that, the better we'll all be, honestly. Another thing would be to encourage them to carefully read the daily agenda, and here's where those F's are going to come in. But remember, nothing is set in stone, and everything is temporary until we decide to fix it. So when I say encourage them to carefully read the daily agenda, here's what I mean. So this is our Canvas page that the students go to every day. Okay. There's several different links here, but the main thing that they do is they go here to the daily agenda. And it's organized by months. And by the way, you can get a Canvas account too to monitor your student there as well. We're in January. So this is the calendar that your student looks at every single day. I put a lot of information inside these little cells. But this is what we do every single day, and it stays up. It's not something that goes away. So I've told the students many times the beauty of having all this online is that you don't ever have to wonder what you missed. Like if you were absent, say you were absent on the 7th, then you can go to the 7th and say, oh, well, those are all the things that I missed, so I guess I need to do those, right? And I feel like students are not great at at doing that on their own. So especially when they've been out, even though we've had lots of conversations saying that, when you miss a day, or when you uh, see a missing assignment, all you need to do is go back to the calendar. The calendar has all the information from January, the today, to the 14th, all the way back to the beginning of school. I have all of this stuff. So they never have to question what assignments they need to do or what's available. Typically, I make assignments due on Friday at midnight, just so that if maybe I assign it on a Tuesday and maybe they had ball practice that night, that they could at least do it on Wednesday or Thursday. And so I try to make, if I assign things, I try to make them always due on Friday. But what I wanted to address was those F's that were in the grade book that you noticed. So I had several students contact me, and really the reason that I'm making this video was this. I was out last a couple days earlier this week, and there were some assignments that I had asked the students to do. And as you can see, this is just one class, but all the MISS things are missing. That is a very large number of students that have not done the assignments, which certainly is a reflection on me as much as it's a reflection on them. So obviously there was a disconnect somewhere. But I felt like there are so many opportunities for the students to look back and know what they need to do, even on those days that I unfortunately was out and sick and had to just do the best I could at that point. And that's going to happen. But just because a teacher's out doesn't mean that things are not due. And so the only reason I really did this, to go ahead and put these in knowing that they haven't gotten done, was because they've had 6 days to do them. And I'll show you this on the calendar. So I had originally assigned them last Friday, so January the 8th. That was when we had the snow day. So I had originally assigned them that day. Well, I got very low participation that day, and I just thought, well, it's a snow day. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, and have the ability to relax too. So I assigned it, and then I noticed on Monday when I was out that many had not done it. So I asked them to please, please read this carefully, make sure that you know what's going on, that the skill is the important part, and you need to be able to prove that you know how to do something. So it's really important that they do these assignments. So I reassigned the same assignments from Friday because so many had not done them. I also did not have I can't say any, but I did not have many students reach out to me asking for any help on this. So when I don't get a solicitation for help and I don't get assignments turned in, then I kind of worry, because I wonder, what about this wasn't clear? Why did they feel like they didn't need to do it? Because it was pretty clearly assigned. And I think it was just upsetting that I think because I was absent, sometimes students don't feel like they don't have to do the work because they maybe think it's busy work or something like that. But at this age, nothing is busy work. I still expect them to learn even if I'm not there. And I think that they are at the age where they can learn even if the teacher's not present. And I would never, not give them the help they need. I wouldn't expect them to turn in these assignments if they weren't prepared to do that. Um, so they had a little bit of learning, and then we called this practice. Um, so if they had at least attempted the assignments, that would have made me feel a little bit better. But as you can see, there so many are just straight, flat missing, which is concerning. So because I felt like, we've had 6 days, because I actually put these in last night, so Wednesday. And so, well, today would be 6 days. So we had 5 days, including the weekend, for these students to get these assignments in, and so many have not bothered at all. So I kind of did that to prove a point, because nobody was asking me on Tuesday why. I'm sorry, nobody was asking me on Wednesday uh, about their missing assignments. They weren't worried about them then, but the second I put them in the grade book, then we were worried about it. So I'm trying to retrain that thought. I'm trying to get them to understand that it's important to do your work, period, regardless of the grade, because it's about the skill. It's about, can you show that you can do a skill? And I just wanted to reassure you as parents that these grades are not going to stay missing. Um, and they're certainly not going to stay F's. But I did this because I felt like the students needed to have this point proved to them, that it's important to do your work even when the teacher's not there, because they are getting to the age where it's really their responsibility. And especially next year when they get to high school, teachers are not going to chase them down to do an assignment. They give the assignment, and then the student chooses to do them. So part of this was just about personal responsibility. So to assure you all, as parents, that I don't think that just because they have an F that they're failing, or that anybody's in real danger of failing. Nobody's in that boat just yet, and grades are not due right now. So I did this just to open up the conversation and to get them to see that it matters. It matters that you turn in your assignments. So to fix these missing assignments and these low grades, what I have decided to do, and you'll see on the calendar here, that the warm up for our uh, for today, basically Thursday, was for the students to go back to 2 of those assignments. We're going to do just 2 at a time. And for the first 10 minutes of class, they just worked on those. It actually ended up being the whole class. They had the whole class to work on these. And many of your students did exactly what they were supposed to do and got them taken care of. And as soon as I have the time, they will get updated in here. So don't fret if they're not already updated, but there's 150 people I have to update. So I'm going as fast as possible. Um, but I just wanted the students to make sure that they are holding themselves accountable for things that they need to take responsibility for. So that's just one thing that I would ask of you all to sort of reiterate and help me with, is that personal accountability piece that we all know how important it is as we get older, especially. So that was the part about encourage them to read carefully the daily agenda. Some other things that you could do as a parent is create that Aspen and Canvas account so that you can monitor your students. That's really important. If you don't know how to do that, by the way, we do have a class website that your student can show you how to get to. Um, I'll just show you quickly where that is. So this is pre-algebra, and right here on this home page, right here, where it says classroom website, which is really more for the parent benefit than anybody. Um, it takes you to the classroom website, and for you all parents, you could click the parent portal, and really it just gives you some basic information about the class, the syllabus, my procedure manual, which is really just basically the classroom structure, rules, what we do at the beginning of class, what we do, what it means, to be quiet during work time, what we're supposed to do when we have electronics, just all kinds of things like that. So just my sort of classroom handbook, if you will. Um, so then I also have these opportunities for you to stay in touch throughout the year. I haven't used Class Dojo a whole lot, but I do have that account for communication. This Canvas and Aspen link is for you parents to make your own parent accounts on both of those, and I highly encourage you to do that. So in any case, that's the classroom website. And like I said, your student, I'm sure, will happily tell you how to get there. Another thing that you can do to support your student is contact the teacher at any time to get questions answered or voice concerns. And that's for the student and the parent. Anytime that you feel like something's not right, or if you see a low grade and your student doesn't usually have a low grade, like now, that'd be a great time to contact me. And a lot of you did today, and I appreciate that. And that's why I decided to make this video, is so that you did um, sort of understand where I was coming from, and how things are set up, and why some of these things were important. Another thing would be to determine to determine what standards they can do by looking on Aspen. Remember when I showed you those standards-based grade descriptions with the sample problems? Look at those together. Quiz them with the sample problems, and that will give you a really good idea what your student knows and what they don't know. And you don't have to know a ton about math to quiz them with the sample problems. I mean, you can watch and see if they can do it or not. But if you have any questions about that, please let me know. Another thing would be to remind your students that math, like all other skills, requires abundant practice. Rome was not built in a day, and your student cannot learn math in one day. Your student cannot learn all of math in 1 year. It takes time, it takes practice. If they're not trying the practice, then it's going to be almost impossible to learn it, and I say that a lot. I give them the video game analogy. When they pick up their controllers to play Fortnite, they that requires practice. You don't automatically know how to play a video game. You practice it. You do it over and over until you're really good at it. So why would math be any different? It's not any different than anything else. And I really want us to have that good attitude about it. Not say things that, I'm not a math person or something like that. You're a math person if you're doing math. So let's make sure we have sort of a positive outlook on things, because sometimes we don't know how much that rubs off on our kids when we say things like that. And I'm guilty of things like that with my own child, that I could certainly do better with my language, and with some things that have been difficult for me. I don't want to put that bad taste in his mouth. So focus less on the letter grade and more on what skills they can do. That's the most important thing right now. What skills can you do? What can you show me that you can do? Any conversations you can have with your kid about math. What do they talk with them about? Finances. Talk with them about cell phone plans. Like which cell phone plans should you get? Which one's going to be cheaper over time? Just think about things like that are practical, that we do use on a daily basis. Ask them how to half a recipe, because that directly goes with what we're, some of the things that we're studying right now. So just have math conversations with normal daily things that you do. Um, it doesn't have to be some big production. Just small conversations go a long way. And finally, encourage them to speak with me immediately when they have an issue. If they can't sign in to a program, if a grade is not right, if they have a question, if they need help, like anything can be fixed, but it's best fixed the sooner the better. So please encourage them to not wait. When they run into a problem, don't wait until I chase them down and say, hey, there's a problem. Because likely they know about it before I do. So encourage them to communicate with me frequently. They don't have to come up to me in class if they don't want to talk to me, you know, in front of the whole class. They can talk to me after class, before class. They can talk to me during advisory. If I need to stay after, I can stay after. It's all just about communication. You can send me emails through Canvas. Um, Lots of different ways of communication, but they have to do it. I do my best to communicate with them, but sometimes, with 150 kids, sometimes it doesn't always happen. So I definitely want you to encourage them, and you certainly should reach out to me too if you ever feel like there's an issue. So I know this was kind of a long video, but I think and I hope that it sort of explained some things that were going on, and I hope that some things that I've done, especially with the whole being accountable for those grades. I hope you understand that, and I hope that you'll support me on that. I certainly don't intend for your students' grades to stay an F, because that's they certainly don't deserve that, as far as in the long run, but they might deserve it a little in the short term. Just to prove that point, and just to learn that lesson of, okay, it's not just about mom reminding me. It's not about my teacher reminding me. Sometimes I need to remind me, right? And considering that they're 4 years away from being grown-ups, I think, releasing that leash a little bit at a time is a good thing right now. So letting them fail sometimes is a good lesson, and that's really where I was coming from. It wasn't to punish, it wasn't to be upset, and notice that um, even though we had all these missing assignments, the first thing that I did was come up with a solution of how we're going to fix it, and that was the daily warm up. The 10 minutes that we're going to spend to get these taken care of over the next few days. So as you can see, we started that today. After the shock wore off, the initial shock wore off, and they saw those low grades. But it was not out of meanness. It was not because I'm mad at anybody. It was really just to help them understand that personal responsibility is a big deal. So, like I said, I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from. I hope this helps. I hope you've learned something about standards-based grades. If you have any questions, let me know. Be sure to access that classroom website so that you can get signed up for all the things. Um, get your student to help you. They are savvy. They know how to get to places. And just please let me know at any time throughout the year if you need anything at all. I'm happy to help. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.